Hello?
Okay. Audio, mic. Okay. Okay. We should be good. Hopefully you guys can hear me clearer. Okay. Boom. You guys can hear me a lot clearer out now. So get your chess study books out if you guys have one. I have a chess study book, and grab a quick pencil and let's get to work. So today we're going to be writing some notes about the Vienna Gambit. I will show you guys how to take proper notes, and we all can so kind of just teach ourselves how to write notes, and we can look back to these in any tournaments or whenever we want to try and play the Gambit. So yeah, let's get straight into the video. I'll give you a couple seconds to go grab your notebooks and maybe a pencil, and you along with me can study the Vienna Gambit. All right, that's good enough. All right, boys and girls, let's start.
So, let's begin. Everybody ready? Everybody ready?
Yep.
Let's go. All right. We are almost 1600. We're moving right along. And 1620, Lozax. Okay, let's go e4. Let's go with a Vienna Gambit, maybe. What should we play? I don't know what to play.
I don't have
Rai
any
Lopez,
notes
Italian, Scotch. Okay, let's play a Vienna Gambit. Let's play a Vienna Gambit. Let's go knight c3. Let's play a Vienna Gambit. And f4. Let's play a Vienna Gambit.
Okay, so this is the main
Because
line.
most people, okay, d6. Now, this is a very common move at this level. It's not terrible, but it's very passive. It's very passive. It's a typical way of declining the gambit. It blocks in the bishop, and it essentially gives us all that we want. Now, in the Vienna, your goal is for black to take the pawn. What does it do? Why are we sacrificing the pawn? Well, there are two main reasons. The first is that we, of course, get a bigger control of the center with d4. The second is that we open up the f-file. And as I've often stated, opening up the f-file is a double-sided sword. On the one hand, it can be good for black because, well, it's a weakness, particularly if white castle is short. But it can also be a great strength because white's rook on f1 will have essentially a wide open avenue to attacking black's pawn on f7, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So how should we play here? Well, there's nothing particular.
All right, so far what I've written down is I've written down d6 is a very passive but easy way of declining the gambit, and you want black to take the f pawn, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. And also feel free to pause the stream whenever you guys want to catch up on the notes. And also I'm gonna write can be weak, but in this case is strong. And also I would write down the main line. I'm just gonna write down e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6. Alright, cool.
Particularly special that we should do. We should just develop our pieces and try to get black to take the pawn. Yeah, with Vienna you play knight c3 first. I'll talk about that a little bit after the game. Okay, knight c6. And now we have two choices for where to develop this bishop. We can develop it to c4, but we can also play the sort of Rai Lopez style and develop it to b5. And the plus of developing it to b5 is that we put immediate pressure on the pawn on e5. I've analyzed this a little bit because I have some students who play the Vienna, and bishop b5 is the best move, I think. Bishop b5. This is like a Rai Lopez on steroids, though. Bishop d7. All right. Now, what should we do? This is a bit of a trick question because I think I know what some of you will come up with. What do you think we should do?
d3.
Yeah. So, Dize, you fell into my trap.
d3.
Now, some of you may think, let me take the knight and then take the pawn and win a pawn.
No.
But you need to see the bigger picture here, which is that white isn't very well developed yet.
That's true.
And going after the pawn, not only does it not win a pawn because black will be able to capture on e4, I'll show this after the game, but those transformations are favorable for black because we've made a weakness on the king side, and so the point of the Vienna isn't to go pawn hunting, it's to develop your pieces and go for an attack. Now I would consider this a little bit more carefully, but it still doesn't work. It still doesn't work. Who can tell me why? If we take on c6, and then we take twice on e5, what move is black going to have at the end of the line? Which shows the fact that the f-file being open is double-sided. You know.
Opens up their bishop.
Not bishop takes e4. Bishop takes e4 is not dangerous, but queen d4 check forks the knight and the king.
Oh.
So instead of this, we should move our bishop. Where should we move it? We can move it either to c4 or to a4. I feel like now that we've castled, bishop c4 makes more sense. Maybe a sacrifice on f7 is on the cards. Let's go bishop c4. If he doesn't do anything to castle, if he doesn't go here, okay, he goes bishop e6. That's not a terrible move. Now, what options do we have? We can either trade bishops. That's probably what we're going to end up doing because that weakens his center and his king side. Or if we wanted to trade on our own terms, if we wanted to make a mature move, how could we trade on our own terms? What's the common move in such positions?
Bishop b3 and then...
It's not d3, it's bishop b3. Bishop b3 is stepping back. You see this in the London, you see this in a lot of different openings. I call it trading on your own terms, where you get black to take your bishop, you take with the a pawn, and it's a much more favorable transformation than, for example, playing d3. But I like the concept of taking the bishop because we weaken his position. Nothing wrong with that at all. Simple chess. Now, again, we can play more positionally, we can play more tactically.
Alright, it's been another 2 minutes or so, so I'll tell you what else I wrote. So I wrote, can be weak, but in this case is strong. e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6. You want black to take the f4 pawn. Let me write, I didn't write down f4 pawn part. So you can play the Bishop Roy Lopez style. White is not very well developed, so you don't want to go off trading pieces. You can, yeah, so just the entire point of the gambit is to develop pieces and go for an attack. You can move the bishop back. Wait, hold on. Okay, there we go. All right, so you can move the bishop back, and you can trade bishops, and also remember to trade on your own terms. All right, let's keep going.
The positional move is to take on e5. We can take on e5 and just say, okay, you're going to have double pawns, you're going to have weak pawns in the center, and then we can play d3 and bishop g5, and we have a slight advantage. But we can also play this very aggressively, very tactically. And how should we play it tactically if we wanted to? Well, he has an e-pawn that's now a weakness. We need to consider that. Can we attack it? Let's go ahead and do it. Knight g5. Probably not what I would have played in one of my own games, but it is in the spirit of the Vienna. Yeah, so, d3 is fine too. d3 is a more positional move. But I want to act with a sense of urgency here. All right. Now we have a really cool idea, which, let me calculate. One moment. I'm just trying to figure it out whether it works.
GM Hikaru looks up at ceiling. GM
believe it or not, it's very complex. There's an idea that is very interesting.
3 viewers, nice.
But it involves a certain degree of risk. But let's do it. Now so many of you are saying f takes e5. And if he takes with a knight, then he walks right into d4. If he takes with a pawn, many of you are noticing the possibility of bringing the queen out to h5. But of course, that's not possible when he has a knight on f6. So, as I'll show after the game, we could have sacrificed our exchange. Here, doing the same thing isn't effective because that knight could step back to g6 and block the check. So here, of course, we should just play d4. With tempo, this is a phenomenal position for us. Knight g6. So what should we do now? How should we transform our clear initiative into a concrete advantage? Now, what we need to realize here is that when you've got a center like this, when you've got an attack on the pawn, you just need, the move, I think, flows naturally from the position. There's 2 pawn breaks that need to be considered. There's e5 and d5. if you look at e5 carefully, you'll see that after d takes e5, that just gives a pawn up. I don't see a follow-up there. And that allows a queen trade, which is not in our favor. But the move d5 is very good because it establishes a stronghold for the knight on e6. That's a more positional move than anything. But that outpost on e6 is going to be completely deadly. Very natural play. After he goes e5. Our move is very obvious. Now we go knight e6.
Of course.
Look at this beautiful outpost. He can't even castle.
Outpost.
He can barely move. This knight paralyzes his entire position. And it's supported by a pawn chain. So even if he goes c6, we don't need to do anything about that because our pawn will not be at risk of being undermined. Yeah, so as Gaines is indicating, bishop g5 is probably going to be our follow-up. Hitting the knight on f6, his position is on the verge of collapse. If he goes bishop e7, he drops the pawn. There comes c6. There comes c6. We don't need to do anything about it. He's not really threatening to take. That will soften up our knight outpost, but it won't necessarily, it won't do anything specific. By the time he gets around to challenging this knight, he's going to be checkmated. Bishop g5, it is. Now, in such situations, the very best players, when you get into a situation, you can feel that the win is nearby. You don't want to rush a single move because you never know when there might be a hidden tactic or a way to improve on the obvious move. So e takes d5 is the obvious move, and it's perfectly good enough. Is there a better move? Is there any way to win the game even faster? There is. If you take on f6, he can take the other knight. But the best move is knight takes d5. He takes on e6, not hard to establish. But we fork the queen and the king.
Yeah. Oh.
Which is what's going to happen, and I'll show what if happened. Yeah, he resigns. If he would have taken our knight, then in contrast with the immediate e takes d5, in contrast with this, the f file is open. The f file being open is obviously in our favor. He's totally paralyzed. We have a very simple plan of victory. We can go queen h5 or queen f3. I mean, there's just anything would win here. He can resign. All right. So that was a nice game. And the Vienna is one of the best openings, bar none, for players of this level, 1600, 1700. So the bottom line in the Vienna is that e takes f4 is a big mistake. A lot of people take the pawn thinking that this is a king's gambit. But the difference between the king's gambit and the Vienna is revealed in the fact that the knights are developed, which is in white's favor, because the move e5 becomes possible, chasing away the knight. In fact, the knight has nowhere to go. It has to go back to g8, which is a huge undeveloped piece.
All right. It's been like 4 minutes. I'll let you know what I said. Okay. So I wrote, knight g5 to attack can be very complex. Usually it has a concrete advantage. You have 2 pawn breaks and d5 is better. There's a free outpost usually, and black will always try to undermine your position. I said best for 16 to 1700s, but I'm at 1300 studying it, so I feel like it could be even more powerful and have more potential. And people think it's a king's gambit, so I just wrote like not a king's gambit is a lot better, and your knights are active. All right, so let's go.
Like this is not good. You go knight f3, don't go d4. Don't allow this nasty check on h4. So you go knight f3, then d4. You've got a big lead in development. You're probably going to win this pawn back. I've got a couple of students who play this. Black is in massive trouble here. Now there's a couple of beautiful lines that stem from this position. One is, well, black often plays d6, right? And you play d4 to support the pawn. After d takes c5, I've analyzed this very deeply with a computer. And it may appear that white is in a little bit of trouble here, because if you take with a knight, what move is possible? I just want to hammer this into people's heads. This is a big no-no in such positions, because it allows queen h4 check. Why is this a problem? Because you have to move your king. If you go g3, then there's f takes g3. The pawn on f4 is a very nasty one. But if you play de, then you allow the queen trade, and you certainly don't want to allow the queen trade. The whole point of a development advantage is to, well, you don't want the queen trade. So you give a check on d5, you develop a tempo. But black simply has the move c6, so what are we doing here? But the funny thing is, you just play bishop c4. You have 3 pieces developed, black has none. And you don't give a damn about any of the pawns. E takes d4. And at this point, wait, just let me remember. Yeah, at this point, you play bishop takes f4. That's the idea. Okay, now you're currently 2 pawns down. currently 2 pawns down. What do you have in return for them? You've developed all 4 pieces and black's developed nothing? Now what are we doing here? Why are we giving away the knight? What's the idea? What's the idea here? And this is an idea which we've had on the speedrun many times.
Oh, bishop
King
takes
in
f2.
contact
Bishop
with the
takes
queen.
f2.
Boom, goes the
Yeah.
dynamite. But
Yeah.
it's not over yet. Black has the move king e7. He doesn't have to take the bishop and drop the queen.
Bishop g5.
Now we sacrifice another piece. We give a check on e2.
Okay, never mind.
This forces the king to take the bishop. But now the king
then
is
just
literally
knight blocks.
toast. And there's one really funny line.
Knight g5
You have
check.
several ways to win the game.
What is it,
Several
knight
ways to
g5?
win the game. Let me remember what the best line is.
Knight e5 or knight g5 check?
I'm trying to remember.
I'm assuming knight e5
Yeah.
because...
So the
no,
best
knight
move
g5.
here is knight to e5 check, centralizing the knight. If the king goes back to e8, then it walks right into a discovered check, which wins the queen.
Oh.
Right, this is a typical discovered check, wins the queen. Black will have some pieces for the queen, but because black's king is so exposed, he's still losing. So the king can go to e6, and you still have a discovery. All right, so king f6 seems to be the only way to avoid losing the queen immediately. But what tactic does white have in this position?
You're on camera. I think.
And this is another very common pattern. Bishop g5 distracting. Knight f7 check, winning the queen. But you don't even take the queen yet.
Right, guys,
if black goes king f6, white has a really sexy move. Really sexy move. You don't have to take the queen yet. What is that sexy move? This move will get you way too many dates. Castle will check defend the knight. Black has to block it with bishop f5. Rook takes f5. This all plays itself. Rook f1, king g6, and checkmate is at hand after queen g4.
So mean. That's so mean.
Yeah, this is mate. That's a really sick line. So black is forced to go king g6. And now comes an even cooler. To me, this is even cooler. Now you can take the queen. That seems very natural, and that is winning. But it's not winning as obviously as people may think, because remember, black has 3 pieces for the queen. And if black brings all of his pieces out, the king may become relatively safe. So instead of taking the queen, what else can white do here? This move looks really bad. You can take the rook. Now, it looks bad because why would you take the rook when you can take the queen? But the point is that the king has nowhere to go. If it goes to h6 or g5, you simply return to f7 and win the queen. If it goes to f6, we already know how white wins. White castles, bishop f5 is forced. King has no other squares. The fact that the queen cuts the king off is what kills black. And then you basically do the same thing. It's a slightly different checkmate. After king g5, you do basically transpose into the main line. Queen g4 with checkmate. You don't even have to take the queen. It's, yeah. This is what I analyzed. So this is really amazing. Now, this is unlikely to happen in all of your games, but it's just one example of how tactical the Vienna can get and the consequences you suffer.
All right. 5 more minutes. I didn't write that much for these 5 minutes. Played black can't play e takes f4. You have to go e5 after that happens. Don't let black play queen h5. Very dangerous and has lots of tricks and traps. You guys want to copy that down? Go ahead. This is what my notes are looking like so far. For you guys, hold on. Let me put it in the light. There we go. There we go. About a page of notes. All right. I'm gonna watch one more video, which is how to beat the Vienna Gambit as black, just so that I know what the counterplay is. And then that'll be our first 30-minute study session on the Vienna Gambit.
If you're behind in development. You're welcome. So I hope everybody followed more or less the lines. Which this is why he takes f4 as a mistake. The best move is d5. The best move is d5. And that counter strikes in the center. It's a pretty logical move, right? You meet a move on the flank with a move in the center. And this is the theoretical position where queen f3 has recently become the best move. This is super interesting. I think Levy's made a course on this. I don't want to get into the details, but it's quite dangerous. We followed more or less the lines.
I see it.
Which this is why he takes f4 as a mistake. The best move is d5. The best move is d5. and that counter strikes in the center. It's a pretty logical move, right? You meet a move on the flank with a move in the center. And this is the theoretical position where queen f3 has recently become the best move. This is super interesting. I think Levy's made a course on this. I don't want to get into the details, but it's quite dangerous. It's quite a dangerous line for black. So black, I've even faced it myself, and I've lost a couple of games here with black. I highly recommend the Vienna for people who want this kind of stuff. Okay, so there.
Can you guys even hear Daniel? Oh, you can. Okay, I feel. Because if you guys couldn't, that would have been horrible. By the way, I'm watching. I have my stream chat up on my phone. Nobody's messaged anything yet, so whatever.
There is no really good way, and technically this declines the gambit. Technically this is a counter gambit almost, but material is equal. So d6 is not terrible, but it's the precursor to playing very passively. So knight c6 is fine, bishop b5. This is all okay for him, but I think he has to develop very quickly. He's got to go bishop b7 and castle. Clearly black is worse here from a just positional perspective, but black's position is very solid here. There's nothing terribly wrong with playing this. All right, and how should white play here? White has a couple of ways of going about this. Maybe it's time to take on e5. Another good move is to tuck the king on h1 so that these queen d4 check ideas, I'm sure you've seen this move played in many types of positions. It's kind of the same as going king b1 when you're castling long. The Vienna is not no. Vienna is played by many grandmasters. It's not unsound at all. I mean, black can equalize in the main line, but white is not worse. White is not worse in the main line, even if black plays everything correctly. What are the reasons white is clearly better positionally? Well, if you can compare the development, right? Look at how passive black's bishops are. White squared bishop is developed to a good square. Knights are developed to good squares. White's got more central control than black. White's got these two pawns. White can bring a third pawn up. It's just even visually, it has to do with the fact that black is very passive. Black's pieces don't have a lot of potential energy, and white's pieces have a lot. All right. So he plays a6. We play bishop c4. Again, why didn't we take on c6? Takes, takes, f takes, d takes, knight takes. Now this is a very bad move because we've castled, black hasn't castled. It should be clear to you guys that black is going to get killed here. I mean, knight takes f7 for one thing. Looks pretty good, and despite this check, I think black is on the cusp of being losing. Another little side note, there is no smothered mate when you've got a rook on f1. This is a very good way to defend against smothered mate because you can always sack the exchange in this position. You're not actually sacking the exchange here because black's rook is also hanging, but that's the bottom line. And but all of that is a moot point because queen d4 check wins the knight. So that's a pretty big, pretty typical kind of blunder when you open the f file. All right, bishop c4. Well, JDD, it's played by GMs. It's played by GMs, but yeah, at the highest level, everybody knows how to equalize. It's not particularly testing at the highest level because everybody knows how to equalize. Okay. But again, white is not worse.
All right, I feel like that's good for right now. You guys can watch the rest of the video because this is kind of just like going over most of the basics again. But whoa, my study session is. That's cool, man. It's like near Daniel Naroditsky stuff. All right, how to beat. Yep, alright, this one. So this is National Master.
So let's say you have to read an incredibly long email from your boss that you have to finish before the big meeting.
What's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to show you what you can play as black if someone plays the Vienna Gambit against you.
Chess vibes.
So the Vienna Gambit is very similar to the King's Gambit. King's Gambit is e4, e5, and then white plays f4 immediately. The Vienna Gambit is very similar, except white plays knight c3 first, and after you play knight f6, then they follow it up with f4.
I'm making a new topic saying how to beat the Vienna. So, yeah.
And the move I recommend you play is d5, counterattacking in the center. There's actually a rule in chess that says if someone's attacking on the flank, you should counterattack in the center. So f4 is kind of on the side of the board, and we're going to counterattack directly in the center. So we're following that basic idea. Now, as a side note, if you thought about capturing this pawn, they'll just play e5 attacking your knight. You can't go here or here because the queen. You can't go here or here because the knight. You have to go back to where you came from, and that's not how you want to start the game. So don't accept the gambit. I recommend you play
Oh
d5.
shoot.
So white has two.
I forgot to do this. I forgot to review my notes. Okay, so I also wrote now counter strike in center. There's Gotham chess course, counter gambit. Black is usually worse in these lines. King h1, it's pretty good. White is better by more space and more development. Look for queen d4 check, winning a knight, and then how to beat the Vienna. Play d5, counterattacking center. Don't take on f4. So far.
Captures that he might do. Most of the time, you're going to see f takes e5. He's going to capture this way because it attacks your knight. Also, this way is not as good for white. If they do that, you simply recapture with your knight. You're hitting this f4 pawn twice, so they have to either capture your pawn or capture your knight. If they capture your pawn, you can take their knight, and then when they recapture, you can play queen to h4. So you're putting them in check. If they block with this pawn, you have queen to e4, forking the king and the rook. So after they, block the check, you simply take the rook for free. So they definitely don't want to do that. So instead of capturing the pawn, if they capture your knight, well, you simply capture with your queen. Your queen is controlling a lot of the center, and normally you don't want to bring your queen out too early because the knight can attack it. But that knight is gone already, so really have nothing to worry about. This is a fine position for black. Okay, so because of the lines I just showed you, you probably won't see this move too often, but if you do see it, you're prepared. All right, so much more common, they'll capture with this pawn attacking your knight. Now, your knight's under attack, so capturing on e4 is the move. Now, there are two common moves that white has, knight to f3 and d3. I want to start with d3. So d3 is attacking your knight, but it also is leaving this option open to you, queen to h4 check. Now, at first glance, if we take a look at this, it looks good for black because you're putting white in check. And if he blocks with g3, you can capture it with your knight because if he tries to take you, you can take his rook. The problem is there's a little trick that white has. He plays knight to f3, attacking your queen. The only good move for black is to go to queen h5 so that you're keeping the pin on this pawn. But then white can play knight to d5. He's threatening a fork on your king and your rook. And if you defend that with, let's say, knight a6, then he plays knight to f4, hitting your queen again, and you're going to end up losing your knight. So it turns out to not be good for black. So the takeaway from all that is if they play d3, you really don't want to play queen h4. You can play it, but just know that you're going to get into a bad position if white knows what they're doing. Now, if they don't know what they're doing, it might work out for you, but I can't recommend that. So the move that you should play is knight takes c3, and they will recapture. And then I want you to play this move d4. Now, the reason that we're playing d4 is because if we don't play d4 and you play something like bishop e6, they're going to play d4, and they get this really nice pawn chain. And this is very solid for white. They're going to just bring their bishop here, lined up on your king side. They have very strong attacking.
Alright, we got a basic understanding of how to beat the Vienna Gambit and what you should do against it. So that's going to be our study session 1 of the Vienna Gambit. Next time, let's watch this Gotham chess course, and then we can not watch the course, sorry, watch the video. So yeah, we can learn about all of that. And if you guys have any other questions or have any other concerns or any other openings that you recommend, I'm thinking of doing the Carol Con next time. So yeah, alright guys, I'll see you all in the next video and have a great day.